addicted in a way.
Yes.
Oh, that's a great angle.
So just started the recording, but Hans and I was sharing with Hans about the book I co-wrote with Ronin about.
What was his name?
That was his nickname. That was his Ronin. I mean, it's Ronin. I called him James Ronin, but Jim Davis. But I think he actually used Ronin on the book cover because for some reason, he didn't want the publicity. But anyway, there was some great ideas in that book. We were using like a lot of my concepts. He graduated from my boot camp and stuff, and I think it was like his insight that a lot of drug addicts, what they just want so much more like connection and adventure and stimulation from life than what the modern world is giving them, and
Aliveness.
and aliveness, yes, and when people are trying to get off drugs or recover from addiction, that they have to come back to this dull, boring world, get a job, be responsible, and there's no fucking adventure and honor in it. There's no fucking, it's not like compelling,
Connection, adventure, honor.
Yes. And so,
before you continue, that is almost the opposite view. So hold your thought. That's almost the opposite view of what I'm taught or brought up with, is that addiction is a way to sedate things, pain, and
yes.
And so it's almost the opposite. Like you take drugs to because you want more aliveness, more connection, more adventure.
Yes.
I think that's a great view.
Yes. And for sure, like a lot of people sedate with drugs, but what are they sedating from? They're sedating from a life that sucks, a life that where they're not living some great story, a life without much connection.
Dealing with the confrontation that they're not living the life they would like to live.
Yes, that brings me back to the biggest thing I was just thinking about that I wanted to record is when I left the Mormon religion and I left my mother, who she was really hurt by it and judged me for it and everything. You wake up to, and you're living in this, the story that you're now living is, I was once this like child of God, chosen for this great mission, I blah blah blah, this whole big story, and that's the story that you've lived in forever, that you've told, that people have told to you for all your entire life. It might as well be eternity because it's everything that you've ever known. And then you're waking up every day and you're not on your mission, and you're not living that purpose, and you're disobeying, and you're whatever, and you are and then you're dealing with the emotions of being that character in that story, that failure, that whatever, and then you deal every day with the shame that comes with that, and that's the whole Ronin thing, right? But then, like, you leave America, the cult of American, like, kind of like I went to an extreme measure to kind of do that. It's the same thing. It's like, who are you in this story of, like, before I was this heroic entrepreneur. Yes. I was doing charting these daring course with my business and about saving humanity and all this. And I had this honor and pride and vision and adventure, women, excitement, all this. And then I'm waking up like just in different places around the world, living like a bum. The story that you're living in, it gives you the feeling about yourself that's the overriding, that colors everything that you do that day, covers every decision you make. And this is the power of the honor work, is you transform that story in a moment, by taking back the choice.
Yes.
Who I am in the face of this story right here and all the feelings it gives me. I am the one who, and it's like that moment in the story when you become the hero of your life, and then honor is present, And then you can actually see a future of choosing heroically, choosing heroically, and you feel called to it. There's honor and vision in your path in the future, and then like you have it, you know. And so in many ways, I feel like vision and honor. It is like a drug, you know. I think I've told you there was this one woman. Back in the early days of my boot camps and stuff, and I went to visit. There was like a small group kind of growing up in Southern Oregon or Southern Washington of people who were doing my work, and we would get together in the mornings to do the honor and the vision work. And she would literally say, it's too much for her to contain. She'd be bobbling, bouncing up and down. She couldn't take it.
I can totally see that. Totally. And you need your fix. You need,
yes.
Like, when I'm like, I need my fix. That's what the call should be. They're your weekly fix.
Yes.
You know? I wrote this. Addiction, like bringing it back to the first idea and what you're saying right now. Addiction to drugs, certain drugs, is a way to deal with the fact that you're facing, that you're not living up to your aliveness. You are not answering the call. So there's a calling you have to adventure, to greatness, to heroic, and you're not living up to that for whatever reason, society or and you're faced with that, and you escape it in drugs.
Yes.
And so and in that drugs you come to terms with that shame or whatever, but it also expands and you live that aliveness in there,
Well, I don't know, you don't come to terms with the shame, but you escape it. But you also there's another piece, and that is a natural biological expectation for living in an alive space.
Right.
Living in nature, living in connection with other human beings.
Yes.
Like just the natural world that for most of us we live so far away from, inside of our square plastic cubicles and our air-conditioned, sound padded walls at home, and the artificial person talking to us from the light screen of our computer or our television. Everyth's fake.
Right.
And there's
no
this,
in it.
like, and even like our neurology, our skin or whatever, like it's like it's starving for like we were not designed to thrive in these fake environments. We're designed to be in nature.
Right.
And so the hunger isn't just one of like our soul longing for adventure, to answer the call to be a hero and have honor and like all this and be the man for our people. It's also just plain old aliveness, And this is interesting to me because I'm having insight about how this can really connect with my book. That man, before the honor and the vision and the purpose and like all of that, I had that, man. I had that, but what I didn't have was like real, just like animalistic connection with other people. Like when you see monkeys and they're just, there's no like, it's almost like you ever seen a dog that you can tell it's been beaten in the past, and it keeps its tail down, it's hiding away, and it won't just be full of life? Okay, that wasn't me, but there was a way to which I had, in growing up in the Mormon religion, but then going to public school every day and living in this, with the bad people, right? That I had like really closed up, I'd never like come out and expressed myself. I never just on that level connected with people. And my only access to really connecting with people was like super deep and serious with the honor work and everything else. That was my own, and when it connected, man, it was deep and it was
right. But you were missing the more animalistic part.
Yeah, just like
you stopped wagging your tail like a dog would do.
Yeah,
that's how they look at it. If a dog doesn't wag its tail, it's like it's scared.
Yes.
Stop wagging your tail.
And like there was so many ways in which I was living a really daring and courageous life, and that gave me aliveness. But not just like wagging my tail and like my tail was up, my head was held high, but I was having no fun. You know what I
You
mean?
wouldn't be like the monkey just scratching his balls, not giving
The
a
white
fuck.
baboon,
The
right? The white baboon. Yeah, that's it, man. And man, and so let me just tie this back into what you said in the very beginning when I was just turning on this recording, was that we're all addicted.
Yes.
We're all addicted because we're all hungry for, and let's like the one piece is just raw, real connection, being in the present moment, connect with nature, all this. There's a huge movement towards this in even American culture right now, you know. Right. Just unplug, get out in nature, connect, you know, natural foods, you know, all this sort of thing. But yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, for me, like, the honor and the vision was so one-sided. It was so like unbalanced, imbalanced.
But the power of it, what I hear from this conversation, so I hear it was imbalanced because you had the aliveness through the honor and the vision, and that's the way you connect also. And I see in the aliveness is connection, is adventure, is, you know, so in that, through that you could connect. But what you were missing was a natural way, just being, wagging your tail, scratching your balls, being the white baboon, the natural way of connecting with people, with the world, you know?
Hey, you know, here's another insight about it, is that in a way, like, what I was living in this hugely heroic story context that I was making up for myself, and that's the power of the work, right? Is that it does that. But the world I was not exploring, inhabiting, and the part of myself I couldn't go was into the realm of shame. And shame was about my past. Shame was like who I was in high school. Shame, like, and I had the power to like just blast the fuck out of the shame, right? But going into the shame was my access to coming alive. You know, it when I was in France and I was trying so hard to speak French and connect with people, and that I couldn't do it. And I went to Brazil and it was the same thing. But then when like I let go of the story and the seriousness and whatever, I just fucking, and I'm just gonna like say whatever, and just as soon as I gave up the whole fucking story about myself, that's when I came alive.
Right.
Because the story itself and needing to see myself
in a certain light
is as this great whatever, that was my barrier to just this raw, real connection that I was so hungry for. And so like for integration, because this is a big part of what 2020 is about for me also, is integration. What I don't want to do is go back to, like, as I come back to my work, I don't want to create this narrative that I'm some great blah 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 leader, right, whatever. And I give you shit about this all the time when I see you too serious about your ego and whatever. I diss you. But it's also an invitation for you to just like, let's connect, man. Like, get away from like Hans or some whatever, you know. But that has given me such freedom. Because my response used to be like, oh, if I'm going to enter a dangerous social situation, meaning I could be laughed at, it could be shamed, it could be looked down upon, was to get serious and take this kind of higher than,
right,
deeper, serious leader, kind of facilitator, kind of
right,
persona, which in its own way was great, but in some ways it was, and O pointed to this, in some ways it was also a coping mechanism, right, for this part of me that felt not enough, shame for who I was in the past.
Right. So let me bring it all together. People are listening. I'm thinking of that. Whoa, it's a lot. No, I got it. So, if you look at the, let's say we're living lives of addiction, okay? And we're living lives, or people listening, you live a life that's bogged down from the natural aliveness that you have and want and is calling you. And your addiction is to cope or escape from the facing of you're not aligned with your aliveness, you're not living it, okay? And so it's hard to get away from that. What I see in your work is a great tool to get back to it from the moment you decided. You can get back to that aliveness, to being aligned with who you're called to be. Aliveness, adventure, connection, just by the work of honor and vision. At a moment you say stop and you take a stand.
Yes.
And from that moment you're aligned again.
Yes.
And so the honor and the vision work is like a big drug. It's a big drug.
Yes.
You know, and you don't need anything else that you're addicted to right now.
Yes.
And you could keep using it. It's a great way, it's a great thing to be addicted to. What's great now, tying in your story into it, is that honor is now something, not as 10 years ago, 15 years ago, which is just the honor.
Yes.
It's an honor that comes with that's integrated with the darker side. That's integrated
Yes.
with desire. It's one that's integrated with the shame that you went through.
Yes.
You know? And so it's not all this just serious kind of thing.
Yes.
It's just it has that dark side incorporated, and that's why it's so powerful.
And you know, for me growing up, there was the bubble of light, which was my Mormon faith, story, community, everything, connection to God. And then there was the outside world that was dark, right? And when I left that, I was in the darkness, but I found the light, and the light was honor. The light was honor. Like, this was like,
Right.
And it was a revelation that this was not a Mormon thing. This was not, this was a rev-a-fucking-lation,
Right.
man. It was like, what if I just fucking grab onto
That
this?
before what you
Follow
thought was
it.
God, you saw now is honor.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, if you apply the Star Wars metaphor of the Force,
Right.
you know, it's not a Mormon thing. It's just there's this force of honor, you know?
Right.
And but the like, just like you can become, your identity is Mormon and you're whatever, like, the danger is that you'll adopt this position that makes you somehow disconnected, because your identity, when I'm talking about position, I'm talking about your positionary identity, which just means like, this is right, this is wrong, this is who I am, this is who I'm not. All these kind of conclusions, the world becomes very static,
Right.
and we tend to position ourselves on top, right? We try to, because it's so uncomfortable not, you know, being at the bottom socially of the hierarchy, whatever,
Right.
being without a story, being without a people, being without a whatever. And so we invent these stories and identities that make us better than, and it disconnects us
Yes.
from other people, from our real feelings, because and also from being anti-fragile. A positionary identity, or ego, is another way of thinking about it, and is very fragile,
Right.
and
not very powerful. Yeah.
and there are many people who limit their adventure of life to only where they can maintain that ego.
Right.
Let me not go hang out with this group of men who are so much better than me that I'll just feel like the lowest guy on the totem pole. And let me hang around people who only see me as better
Right.
than, or whatever. And
But I
like,
can surely see that for myself. You know.
yeah, let me only play the games I can win.
Yes.
Let me stay away from the games where I look like a complete idiot.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? And but what I found is that, again, this is what I found myself doing, right? In a lot of ways. And what I found is that, man, when I fucking destroyed that positionary identity, all of that, and I was just out in the world being an idiot, okay, imagine you show up in Brazil, and okay, there's a certain kind of status you can have just being they see you as a foreigner, they can hear your American English and whatever. But like to put yourself in a social situation, like you go out to a club with a lot of young people who are trying to be cool and whatever, and you show up and like I had no money at this point in time. I'm not dressed well. They're dressed, you know, to the nines, they're whatever. And you enter a social group of people with, you know, and they're clearly like the top of their social class in that arena. And they can all be laughing at you. They're speaking a language and laughing, and you don't know what they're saying because you don't understand the language. And to just like be in that situation and not have no identity to fall back on and not rely on that, and just like survive. And I found such enjoyment and freshness and like relief. Like I don't have to try to maintain this serious story about myself. As I'm saying this, I'm not even in so much in that someone might listen to this. I'm trying to explore this dynamic because I think it can help.
I see it on
people, and because I want to put this into my work,
right?
Into my book. I mean, my book.
I see it on a very micro level with me too. You know, like apart from, as you talk about this, where I see my ego is limiting me, but I see also the times that I deal with it in a great way. When I develop the idea of like, oh, I'm a Renaissance man, and I live that way. When I go cycling with my, say, Spanish club, you know, the fact that I'm a seducer is no use, you know. I'm not there. I'm the cyclist there.
Yeah, yeah.
What my status or whatever depends on how fast I go.
Right.
You know, and this has nothing to do with the other thing. Or when I'm a musician, you know, and you play with a band, your identity of seducer or cyclist is of no use there, you know, and you could and I find great relief in that, you know, to shift from one to another.
Yes.
Where I don't
yes.
You know, I don't have to be this guy.
Yeah, and that makes me think of like in each different culture I'm in where I'm speaking a different language, I feel like an entire new part of me has come alive. And I think that's part of my excitement about being back here in Brazil is there's a different Michael, who's Brazilian, you know, and it's like yeah,
I can even hear it.
Still gets to come alive again, you know?
I can even hear it. Imagine this in the way you speak English when you're which part of the world you're in. You're like, because that's a different guy speaking the same language. When you speak English in Africa, you speak a different one.
Right. You know, and there's so many like guys back home who imagine they're not just feeling like they're resigned to this modern lifestyle. They're also resigned to like one identity and one way of seeing the world, one language, especially Americans.
Wow. One way of dating.
Yeah, one way of...
resigned to one way.
Yes. And this is like what's come alive. There's new worlds out here.
Exactly.
And for me, like Africa was like, holy shit, there's a whole other world. That's what I felt like when I went to Africa. It's like, wait a second. And there was like, and a new me was coming alive. Right. And more like, that's just a piece in itself. You know, that was such a revelation. Right. And when I see a lot of people traveling, like Americans traveling, and they go to like these American resorts in these other countries, and they take the American vacations and like all of this, they're not actually exploring that other world or that other culture and language and country, and they're not. A new part of them isn't coming alive. It's the same them, just like going to Disneyland or going to a new place in the States, and it's such a limit. It's not a critique on them. It's just like, man, what they're missing that could be.
Well, it's in a way it's what tourism does in compared to travel.
Right.
And travel is an invitation into becoming a new you.
Yes.
I love what you just said, is that this seems to bring it together, that they're resigned to a certain way of living. I forgot where I was going to start. They're resigned to a certain way of living. They're resigned to to be in one person. They're resigned to be in one, but they can feel there's something else. And what we're inviting them into is to explore a different you. Explore and see the aliveness that comes from that. Oh, this is what it was. When I traveled, this ties in with you. When I traveled, before I went to Africa, I traveled quite a bit already. And I had parts of me coming alive, just because of the travel. But when I went to Africa, it was that animalistic part of me that totally, like, I've seen different ways, like this, the spectrum was in front of me,
Yes.
And it was like, when I went to Africa, so you look in front of you and you see the whole world, South America, Asia, Europe, America. And then I went to Africa and I'm like, holy fuck, I look behind me and then there's like 50% more,
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
Yeah.
This animalistic side of
Yes.
it. Whoa.
Yes.
And that's after traveling so much already.
Yes.
And I still am, what the fuck?
Yes.
So I think that's a great way of what we're inviting guys into, is to invite them into discovering a different part of them, that they
Yes.
know it's there.
Yes.
You don't have to become someone else. It's a part of you. Discover your aliveness. Discover, all the other stories you can tell. Discover who you can be.
Yeah, and he often talked about like undoing and not doing, and like the part of me that I was never going to discover by trying to be in control of my life.
Right.
It was, for me, everything was in control. The future, I was creating,
Right.
all of it, everything was with intention and logic and control and creation. But there was no space for just being undone and magic,
Right.
and not knowing and not doing. And that was also the invitation of Africa. Africa was like, I went from like going into my office and I have all my, I have my methodologies and my formulas and my rituals and my programs, and everything is like a control panel, and
Right.
like all this kind of thing, right? And Africa is just, and especially, part of the gift was being with Robin, who co-led this event with me, because she was not on top of this event at all. It was, in many ways, it was a clusterfuck. That whole first trip to Africa was a clusterfuck. Nothing was well planned or designed. We were constantly getting in trouble, and things weren't going how they were supposed to. We show up at this school where, like, I'd been brought to do this week-long program, and it turns out they didn't really have much of an idea what we were doing there, and they hadn't told the kids about us, and they're like, well, okay, yeah, I guess you can invite the kids to come to an after-school thing, and I guess you guys can use the whatever space or whatever. It was like, we're making it up. So I'd left my serious life behind, my business, all this stuff, even risking its survival, because I really didn't have the financial situation to just disappear for a month in Africa, and the expensive flight and all this kind of stuff. And here I am, and like the thing's not even planned, and the kids aren't even preparing to go, and the whole trip was like that. So it was kind of an invitation into like, this is so ridiculous. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? But that's what was so enlivening about it as well. It was just like embracing the ridiculousness. It was some ways it was a return to childhood, like this situation is not controllable. Other people are, like, and in a way, Robin was in the lead of the event, so I kind of left that to her in some ways, and it was just like
I can only imagine your struggle. What I'm seeing is this. Like, there's so many ways when you're a child of discovering and exploring so many parts of you. It's not defined. It's all open, And the Western way is a limitation of all that. In like one way, there's one certain way you go about. You go to school. You go into debt, whatever. You marry. You have a job.
There's like one way, you know, productivity, all of that. And what the invitation that there is, and it's in travel and it's in discovering a different era, is to go back to the space of possibility, to unlearn in that way.
Yes.
You unlearn that the Western way is the way,
Yes.
and you just see
Well,
different ways.
as I see it, it's culture, because every culture it is a program, it is a system.
Right.
It says this is right, this is wrong. You can do this, but you can't do this. You can think this, but you can't think that. It's like a cult. Like I really map it on to my religion, because it's designed to channel your behavior, your
Right.
thoughts, everything, so everything works. You know, so society works, everything.
Right.
And the thing that's kind of nefarious about let's say the American culture, is so much has been designed for you to be a cog in the machine. Everything's materialistic, everything's about paying off the debt and everything else. And if you're not careful, if you don't wake up to it, if you don't really pay attention and take control of your life, that's the life you're going to be living.
Yes.
Is the one that feeds the system, and and you trying to find some measure of happiness,
Right.
as a slave, as essentially a slave.
Yes.
And there were plenty of slaves who, you know, like most slaves, they don't up and rebel. They don't up and start a revolution and whatever, because there's some measure of, it's okay enough.
Right.
It's not bad enough to really, it's not, the frying pan's not so hot that I got to get the fuck out and risk life and limb.
Or cold enough, like I say about frogs. It's just something is not right, but we become so okay with tolerating our plight.
Yes.
You know, it's like a blanket.
Yes.
It's just warm enough, man, but not really.
Yes.
But it's too warm to cast it off and say.
Right.
You ever had, like I had it in the night? You're too cold. You're a bit too cold, you know, but you're too warm to do something about it.
Yes.
and you're in this limbo.
You know, I think that this is, you know, as like we all try to figure out, like, what's my gift that I have to bring? You know, what can I offer humanity? I think one thing that at the time it certainly didn't seem like a gift, but that when my parents got divorced and they told me they were getting divorced, it was like the rug was, like, Dad's not coming home. You know, I'm 14. It was literally like the floor had been pulled out beneath me and I was in free fall, and like the world is collapsing in on itself. What's true, whatever. It's like, it was a great thing in this way, because this whole construct of this Mormon world that I was living in just shattered. And then it's like, but I can imagine if that hadn't happened, how would I ever
Exactly.
have broken free from it myself? How would I ever have done that?
You wouldn't.
Know? And but this is what any man can do who finds himself, he's got addictions, because the world he's constructed in partnership with authorities and culture and everything else
Yes.
has left him less than fully alive.
Right.
You know? And our invitation is, you can shatter that world, explore new ones, create new ones, become someone new, develop a whole new part of yourself that might not be related whatsoever to this other identity that you might have. Like, yeah, and
if you don't answer the invitation, you know, maybe coronavirus will force it from you. That will be your parents divorcing and the whole rug is pulled underneath you. The whole Western way.
And maybe that's
Fuck.
maybe that's partly why I live for crises. Like I thrive in, like, when the chaos is there, is because, like, that's given me life. You know, that my relationship to it is like, it's given me life. There's opportunity. Everyone's in breakdown mode. Everyone's questioning. Anything's possible now. You know, and so, because most of the time when people are generally happy, content, successful, no one's questioning shit. All you're thinking is how to keep perpetuating the current system because it's given me this level of comfort,
Right.
right? No one really wants to entertain the big questions. No one really wants to go on an adventure because it could disrupt every fucking thing.
That's great. Now, more than ever, it's time to do that. It's great.
Just listen to the birds. And so Africa, that first trip to Africa was the crack. It was the crack in my American heroic world. It's like, this isn't the only world out there. This isn't the only life that's possible for me to be living. Yeah. And when I went back the second time, that crack got massive. And that part of me grew. And then when I went back to America, my old life, it was like the sky was cracked open, the earth was cracked open. It wasn't just this perfect. You know these dome, like the little snow world, these glass.
What's the movie with Jim Carrey?
Crystal balls where you turn it upside down and then it's snowing and everything. It wasn't like this perfect dome anymore. It was cracked in the bottom, cracked in the top. I was cracking open. The African part of me was starting to show through, you know. But when I was going back, like, I was starting to close up. Like, the African me was starting to, like, become enveloped again by this American identity, and that African world was like, the cracks were closing. I was like, no, I need to hang on to it.
What's the movie with Jim Carrey where he's raised, he's like, he doesn't know it, but he's the center of this reality show?
I didn't see that one.
It's exactly that, you know, and then he starts all of a sudden see cracks, like things are not functioning. I think he even like sees the decor in a way, like,
yes,
and it is a dome where he's living in.
Interesting.
And he's like, fuck, you know, and then he wants out.
Interesting. Yes. So for me now, honor is like this super powerful tool, life-giving and life-saving,
life-regiving
tool that can help so many people.
Yes.
But I am no longer just living in a world where I'm like this heroic kind of Luke Skywalker figure who's so serious. Even if you haven't seen this, I can't believe you haven't seen Star Wars, but even in Star Wars, the Luke's character was like, he's like so kind of pure, innocent, hero, serious. That was totally that part of my persona. And then there's Han Solo, who's just like this rogue dude it's all about the adventure. He doesn't give a fuck, and he actually resists the call to be a hero. In the end, he reluctantly comes back. He's like, fuck, all right, I'll come help you guys save the fucking universe from the dark forces. But it's not like, you know, and he's the one he's being a complete kind of ass with the female character, and whereas Luke has she doesn't trigger attraction in him at all, because he's just like this nice guy. Yeah, it's so funny. It's so fucking funny. But that varies.
It's not unfitting, Michael. It's not unfitting that guy's name was Hans Solo. Maybe there's a lesson there.
Hey, and Luke Skywalker.
Holy fuck! That's what it is.
That's hilarious. But I definitely...
Shit.
You know, even in my psyche, that was a duality back when I was in my youth, you know. I was much more drawn to like the Han Solo character, and but I felt much more like the
Luke Skywalker.
yeah.
Wow.
Luke Skywalker being very much the good Mormon boy, you know.
I want to watch Star Wars. I saw one though. I saw one Star Wars movie when they're in the snow.
Watch the first one. Watch the first one. You have to watch the first
Remember the one with the snow?
one. It's maybe the third one or something.
Really nice.
Yeah.
I really like that one.
Yeah.
But that's all I've seen.
Yeah, you need to watch
And
the
then I
first
saw the recent ones, like, well, recent, 20 years ago or something like that. I saw those.
one.
Man, I'm going to summarize it one more time. Just to keep track.
Okay, I want to summarize this just for myself with my book because I'm trying to figure out like the final edit to my book. I think I have to tie it back in with my Mormon story and that world being cracked open when I was 14, and that's what happened in Kenya. Is the world was it was like crack, and then another crack, and then another crack, and finally like and when I come back to America, those cracks start to come back together. Everything starts to, you know.
After 3 cracks, you can't repair it. No.
After enough cracks, it's just like, and then finally it was like, I saw it coming back together. I was like, fuck that, I'm getting the fuck out of this egg. You know, and it's like.
You start pulling in the crack.
Right, I'm leaving for good.
Yeah, that's nice.
I have to go back and listen to this audio so I can make this final edit to my book. You were going to summarize
still
things.
recording?
Yes.
Okay, let's summarize it. Because there's the your side and the story side, which is very important, you know. And this is why we have this conversation also. But I'm constantly thinking to people listening, you know, and I want this to be part of it. So that's why I'm summarizing it also in this sense. Is that what I loved starting this conversation is that the many ways we're addicted, and that talking with your friend Ronin, who wrote that book, that well, not only him, but that addiction is in a way to deal with facing the fact that you're not aligned with your own aliveness anymore.
It's a craving for aliveness.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a craving to answer your call for aliveness, and you haven't done it, and therefore you like deal with that.
It's a craving just for aliveness and connection, all that period,
Yes.
right? But then it's also to the extent that you're not doing what your aliveness requires and you're living in that shame, then you want to escape to addiction. You want to sedate and numb to escape the pain of living in a story where you are not pursuing your likeness. So it's a double whammy.
Okay,
it's
but
both of those.
But the interesting part is that society talks about sedating, you know, and that's and I can see that's what I think of of addiction. But what's great about it is now that you say no, at the core of that is a yearning for aliveness, for adventure, for doing your calling, for romance, for all of that connection.
Yes.
And so it's there.
And
You
even
have it.
even the sedating is a yearning to be not living in shame.
Exactly.
And to get some sense of honor again. Like drugs can give you something that approximates honor. This feel good inside. And so it's both for aliveness and for honor. But what if?
Yeah, exactly.
What if we pursue those directly?
Exactly.
What if we pursue those consciously?
Instead of going to the sedation part, you answer that yearning by answering it, you know? And how do you do it? Especially, how do you get back to that? Especially for guys for years and decades who have been sedating.
Yes.
Because you might say it's easy for us, you know, you keep answering that call of aliveness, you know? We've been doing it and practicing it. But imagine you've been sedating yourself unknowingly, you know, by society, given in the Western way, you know, your addictions of TV and food and doing that work and paying off your debt, you know. How do you get back from that? And that's where your work comes in.
Yes.
That's where the work of honor can come. Because with one simple stand you could completely shift the way you've been living. You could say stop, and this is where we're going. And it doesn't need much. It needs a stand, and it needs the exploration of something else.
Yes.
One stand, one trip, it could change everything.
Yes.
If you take one step, and you like with a group of guys who do this, you take one stand for something, you know, and you take one trip. You come and see us here in Brazil, or you come and meet us in Africa, or you wherever, you know, and you see what the fuck. There's a different way out here.
Well, not just taking a trip, but doing it in a way that will actually open up those other worlds and those other parts of yourself.
Right.
Because it's very easy to go take a kind of American vacation.
That's what I'm saying. We are there.
Yes.
You know? So I'm trying to see what's the minimal step that guys can take. Take a stand with us. Take a trip with us. You know?
I like that.
And we'll do it.
And this is a call not just to aliveness and adventure, but and connection and everything that's there. But it's also the possibility for gaining real wisdom, because the more that because life is not just one perspective, and you are not just kind of one identity. You are not these fixed things. The world is not this fixed thing. Wisdom is imagine you have countless perspectives available to you. Imagine you have experienced countless embodiments of different ways of being and life. That opens up to real perspective, real wisdom. So this is also an invitation to wisdom. It's also an invitation to strength and becoming anti-fragile.
Right.
I mean, imagine that your whole American world is falling apart. Well, what if you have a Brazilian world, and a Brazilian identity, and an African world, and an African identity? Like, those worlds don't instantly fall apart just because your American identity and lifestyle and perspective is falling apart, right? So it's also a way to be resilient, anti-fragile, and to grow stronger.
Or to make also more informed choices. Imagine a wine connoisseur, you know, and he chooses the best wine between 2, or he chooses the best wine between 20, you know?
Yes.
Which is more deliberate, which is more informed.
Well, you could put that in the category of wisdom, right? Like you've had much broader experience, and so you can make more sound choices, right?
One stand and one trip, man. We'll take care of the rest.
Yeah, I'm really Bom dia.
Bom dia.
I'm really curious how to shape the book. As I think this audio, this conversation holds the keys to me developing the protocols to do my final edit.
Great. I think this conversation holds the keys also to our invitation to guys into the secret kingdom through honor and answering the call of adventure, but first through honor.
Yes.
And I can see how it will help guys. We will help them see how they've been enslaved by one way.
Yes.
And we'll give them the tools to break free from it. And we'll do it. We'll do the main work for you. All you need to decide is to take a stand. All you need to decide is to take a trip.
And honor is very much the feeling of real courage. It's the power behind. I don't want to say it's the only kind of power behind courage, but it brings that clarity, that inner peace, that will to move forward.
The only trouble is that it is a bit like an addiction also. You want your fix, but it's the best addiction you can have.
Yeah.
You know? And
it's an addiction that, because with honor you can face yourself, you can face other people, you can face reality. Honor is you know, we're thinking, if you're feeling shame about yourself, which when I say this, most guys might think, well, I'm not feeling that. Well, most guys aren't feeling that because they've developed a fixed identity and worldview that has them not feel shame. So instead of powerful honor, what they have is a fixed ego positionary identity that allows them to feel safe and comfortable from not instead of feeling shame. But that's a very fragile way and fixed way and limiting way of going into the world.
I don't only say it's fragile. I say it's killing you. It really is killing you in the long term.
Yeah.
Like
it numbs you. It.
I was gonna say
Yes.
it, like frogs in gradually, like frogs in freezing water. With every dropping degree, they grow a little bit more numb. And if you don't realize it in time, you don't break free, you'll end up dead. Your soul will be dead.
Yes. Yes.
Cut the recording.
You know this sound? Yeah, you know how many hours and hours and hours I've held one of those machines? And the vibration and the mastery. Like for me, it's not like a lot of people, they hate going out and fixing their yard or something. But for me, it was like, I'm holding the most powerful ones made by man. Like you know how you feel when you're in flow, you're doing something you're the most masterful at, and it's just, that's that for me. So
That's a good
it's also
sound.
vibration, man.